Hello, everyone. I'm Lisa Simonian with the Neocon team, and I'd like to thank you for joining us for today's program with Neil, Guy, Tish, and Ray on the changing face of design and how the design industry is supporting the workforce differently. Just a quick few housekeeping items. Today's session qualifies for accreditation, and certificates will be emailed within 3 business days to everyone who attends the full session today. If you have questions about accreditation, please visit the Neocon website under programming. Also, the last 15 minutes of this session will be a question and answer session. So if you have questions, please feel free to submit them via the Q&A box, not the chat box, but the Q&A box. So Ray Ashide is today's moderator, and Ray is Director of Client Services at IA New York. His career has included dynamic leadership roles with a diverse group of recognizable brands and global retailers like Bank of America, Neiman Marcus, Bloomingdale's, and Reebok. He's been recognized and awarded for his work across a broad span of environments within wholesale, retail, franchise, and trade show exhibit design. And now I'm going to pass it over to Ray.
Well, Lisa, thank you so much for that. We really appreciate what Neocon is doing and what this seminar is all about. So with that, I think I want to cast our direction back just a little bit and think about what happened last year in 2020. Because as we know, the world as we knew it shifted dramatically. And as designers, architects, technologists, and strategists, our skills have been instrumental in allowing us to not stand by while this has happened. In fact, it's really served to push our creativity even further than we ever thought possible before. We're really no longer tethered to designing just physical environments for our clients, but rather we've been challenged by these teams to rethink and to merge built and virtual environments into one seamless ecosystem designed to support a globally distributed workforce. With the urgency to foster employee engagement, we are now finding clients and their teams are willing to experiment and reinvent themselves in ever more dynamic ways. As Lisa said, I'm Ray Ashide, Principal and Director of Client Services for IA Interior Architects. And today, we're going to spend the next hour discussing 3 fundamental ways in which IA is collaborating with our clients through this paradigm shift. And we're going to share some lessons that we've learned from each. Our 3 presenters will open their individual discussions with a synopsis of each of these efforts, including the creation and usage of the virtual environment, workplace experience applications, and the technology integration into physical workspace. So joining me today, as you can see on your screen, are 3 of my very esteemed colleagues. And let me introduce first Tish Cruz, who is Principal and Senior Director of Strategy and who leads IA's strategy practice. Tish has extensive experience in working with corporate clients to effectively capture their needs, develop their vision, and create strategies that promote and foster flexible and engaging workplaces. A strong proponent of the integration of strategy and design expertise in shaping workplace, Tish is actively engaged in furthering these synergies throughout IA, yielding highly functional workspaces that explode with meaning and connection to their businesses. Next up will be Neil Schneider, Principal and Design Director. Neil has provided successful design solutions for a range of our clients and our brands around the world. Neil's design work is a powerful reflection of his capacity for translating organizational goals and strategy alongside cultural and business influences that ultimately create evocative physical space. Neil is passionate about design mentorship and innovation across our firm. And ultimately, I'd like to introduce you now to Principal and Director of Design Intelligence, Guy Messick. Now, Guy holds over 30 years experience as an architect, a technologist, and a thought leader in emerging technology. Focused on understanding the connection, in fact, between design and these technologies, Guy works to guide our internal adoption and usage of innovative technologies across our firm that we use, but we also deploy on the benefit for our clients. Guy finds architecture the discipline that best unites his many interests and talents, including art, design, and actually fine woodworking. So Guy, we're going to start with you. So let's talk about what's probably a large question on many people's minds when they looked at today's dialogue. So how can we better understand both the role and also the value of a virtual work environment?
Sure. Thank you, Ray. I tend to tell stories, and Ray's probably used to this, is we started with an understanding of our own experience, going from working in offices, whether traveling, et cetera, to very rapidly working in a dispersed and remote environment. That we transitioned in 3 days from office to homework and hub work, like many of you on the call. And we found initially there was a gap there. We started really burning out pretty quickly on lots of web calls. We're still in them all the time after every year. But we started thinking there may be something better. And simultaneously, we were getting interactions from clients, especially those who had worked with us in virtual reality. We've been using VR in our design work for like over 6 years now. So to express and walk through and view design well before it's built, something we were well established in, and clients were saying, well, can you use that to help us connect better? And that was the gap that was coming up. How do we do a little better? And the solution we found as we did more research was extended reality. How do we take not just a better web meeting or a Zoom meeting, but an entire way of looking at an ecosystem, at looking at virtual real estate, if you will. So we went all in on that, staffed, invested, and created part of our business that focuses on extended reality. And that's what I hope to describe for everyone here a bit more and interact across the board. Good so far, Ray?
Absolutely.
Okay. Before I go into, we have some other videos and actions, but I was just on a call this morning with a client who is looking for space for meeting and interaction with their customers. Now, this is a global tech giant, and we're having a meeting with people in San Francisco, where I sit, in New York, and Rotterdam simultaneously. And we were doing it in a web call, talking about extended reality. And it became obvious to everyone we needed to move to an environment where we were interacting with each other very differently. And we're seeing sort of duality. Part of it is, again, as Neil knows, this gets more subtle and breaks out more into, do we want to duplicate existing space? Do we want to twin what we're familiar with? Or do we want to build something completely new because there's no gravity? The rules are a bit different. And what we're finding is it's going to be probably a hybrid of the two, and things don't change as much as one might think. So a quick explainer about what we're talking about with extended reality. It's bringing together different components that create the best experience for the group and the stakeholders and the client that you're talking to. So custom design is very important, but the platform is just as important. So virtual reality using VR headsets, in particular the Quest 2s, where we're at now globally. And that is for an environment that doesn't exist and or you're not there. And so it's completely virtualized. Augmented reality is about overlaying virtual items into the real world. Like it might be furniture in your living room, Pokemon Go, or walking into an advanced meeting with your mobile without needing a headset or any other interaction. And we'll see some examples in a video of that. And then mixed reality, which is more than just exciting. It is going to be a way that really enables you to work across locations in actual locations where it makes the most sense to be, either whether virtually or in the real world. A lot of us are going back to the office. This is going to allow us to interact in a rather different way. I'll get right into the video. This is very quick, short, but this is like design. So pin-up walls, design in virtual space, reviewing things from anywhere in the world. Ideating, meetings, sticky notes, presentations, PowerPoints, reviewing locations or meeting in them that make sense, understanding plans, war rooms, sketching. This is mixed reality, where I'm in San Francisco, they're in Boston, and we're interacting together in real time. And finally, looking through ideation and meeting space. How do you pull a meeting room out of your pocket and put it in there? I don't know why there's airplanes in there. People are having fun. That's another thing that's harder to do in other means. Swapping out materiality, and just having things at your fingertips that makes this experience far superior to just a web meeting. It's not just the tool sets, it's not just the custom design, the interaction of the platform, it's also the experience. And what's coming, what's next on a sort of technology standpoint, I think looking at glasses, big difference between a headset and glasses, of course. We're seeing huge investments by Facebook Virtual, formerly Oculus, and like Qualcomm. Most of the phones of everybody on this call has a Qualcomm processor chip in it, so it's interesting jumping in. And ease of use and having something in your pocket you can quickly connect your phone, put on, and experience augmented mixed reality is going to be critical. Because not everyone is going to want to or needs to or can put on a headset. So we're just going to see a lot of hardware changes in just the next year. This is happening very rapidly. And then in the upper left, we're seeing an example of meeting together, and you're seeing a holographic type image on the right there. That's someone whose projection is entering the room in a mixed reality. This is from Microsoft, their new platform called Mesh, where their ecosystem is about virtualization of everything from a Teams call to entire worlds. And lower right are avatars. That is a big, big deal. I can't stress that enough. Understanding how we best represent ourselves and how we want to identify in virtual space, no matter where we are, on whatever spectrum you want to count on, is going to be a critical part of the experience and, I think the equity of experience. And then finally, some bigger ideas, feeling the presence of others in space, something that we miss a lot. How do you work that out in a more virtualized environment? We feel very strongly we can definitely get to a pretty good place there, experiencing things together, whether it's ideating, collaborating, or watching a video, or etc., in a way that we feel that we are sharing experience in a more meaningful way. And finally, doing it from anywhere. Whether you sit down at a coffee table in a coffee shop and bring up your screen and keyboard, or you're meeting with people and you're seeing them in the same space simultaneously, it's got to work from that anyway. And with that, Ray?
Wow, Guy, I mean, there's a lot of interesting ground that we're covering here when we think about what this could potentially mean. And I know we're going to take some questions at the end of the discussion, but immediately I'm thinking about the word experience that you just mentioned so many times, and thinking about how that equity of experience we're seeking to create with colleagues who are dispersed throughout XR. So maybe you could share a little bit about how we're doing that.
Well, kind of about the idea of accessibility and equity of experience you're mentioning, Ray, is something we're very passionate about in the built environment and now extended reality environments. But our clients are also, as we talk about this, the response has been significant. And it can be things we understand now. There's not a lot of science. This is all very new, but putting inserts into headsets that correct color blindness, so anyone can share in a discussion that involves color and branding and things of that nature, for example, or design, or having very fine controls over light and sound levels. There are people who that's incredibly important for them. They may be on the spectrum, there may be a different way of experiencing it, all the way down to just easing certain social anxieties about being in crowded rooms. We have found through a lot of pilot and testing and focus groups that people feel more at ease at times in a virtual environment.
Guy, I'm going to actually interrupt you just quickly.
Yeah, go ahead.
For some reason, there's a block on the screen that several people are noticing. So there might be a pane that's popped up on your computer. It's gone now. Thank you. Absolutely.
Oh, sorry about that.
No worries. This is a live telecast. Anything can happen.
And finally, working with, again, that science part, we have a group within the firm, Eco Studio, that focuses on accessibility and sustainability. And we will be working with them for a more evidence-based approach on other accessibility and equity issues that we can solve, we believe, through equality.
And if I could just add in, I think one of the key benefits to XR is it's just so inclusive, right? It's really bringing together people in that inclusive way. I think about back during the course of my career, how many meetings I've been in, face-to-face meetings where the majority of people are sitting together, but there's one person calling in on the Polycom, and we forget about them. They can't get that word in edgewise because they're not present. We don't see them present. So this really brings the opportunity to really bring everybody together on an equal playing field in a fun way.
It also on the design side, and I know for us, the excitement.
as I said, we're live and in person. Neil, I think we've lost you.
You're on mute, Neil.
Yep. Oh, tech support. Neil, I think we might have to come back to you and hear what you have to say. Let's see if our panel, if we can continue forward. Because actually, Tish, I wanted to build a little bit about what you were just talking about right now, and maybe switch it in a little bit different way, because talking about how visibility works, how we get people engaged together. So how is XR potentially changing both the cost and the connection between real estate in these types of groups? I mean, if we're asking a client to invest in XR, what might that mean from a financial perspective?
Well, if we think about it, many organizations are really taking a step back and assessing what are the resources employees need to be successful. Space and technology have always been resources for us, right? Mm-hmm. But the type and the mix are being looked at differently given the rise of hybrid working. So XR and other technologies will require an investment. It will also, I think, require corporate real estate, HR and IT, IT to work together more closely than they have in the past to really define for their organization what's that right mix. And I think just the other point that's really important is not only just defining that mix, but once you have that mix in play, if you will, is measuring it. How's it doing? Is it working for us? Are there things we need to tweak? Do we need to do some things differently? So it's not okay, we're going to fix, we're going to define it and then move on. It's constantly evolving.
Hello.
Absolutely. Oh, Neil, you seem to be
I'm back.
Excellent.
So sorry about that.
No worries. Absolutely.
The beauty of technology. If we were all in a virtual world, we could just have this conversation. It's the ins and outs
There's
here,
never
right?
issues there, Neil. You're right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, we're glad to have you back. In fact, I'm not sure if you were able to catch Tish's most recent answer. We're talking about some of these ideas about investing in XR. I mean, and ultimately, from your design perspective, what might you think about how that comes to life?
Well, I think as I kind of answer both questions there is, the question before was the excitement around that building equity within the experience, right? There was a little bit about there. I think as designers, the exciting part is not only are we designing the built environment, but now we have the ability to play in a field of building the virtual environment that goes along side by side. And I think as companies look at coming out of this pandemic and this return to the office, we're building these new platforms. It's being smarter financially with where you're putting some of your money and actually developing some of these three-dimensional worlds that people can go in, ideate together, grow together, learn together that complement the company side by side. So instead of coming in and retooling a lot of the built world, you may come in and just do a big technology upgrade to interact with that. And I think there's some really amazing opportunities for us as designers to stretch our boundaries to create cultural experiences or brand immersion in a VR or XR world that complements these beautiful spaces that we're all developing for our clients.
Absolutely. No, I think there's something that's really incredibly powerful about that, and I'm glad your mic is back.
Yeah,
because it really provides some interesting thoughts. And based upon those insights, I know you're going to share a little bit more with us later. So, however, right now, Tish, I'd like to go back to you and shift our discussion a little bit from virtual environments themselves to the benefits of workplace experience applications. Now, can you share with us a little bit about your experience in this space and ultimately how they might help to shape community?
Yes, love to. I really think workplace experience apps are going to be more important going forward than ever before. So just think about it. Imagine that everything you need to access in a typical workday is located in one spot. You never have to think about, gosh, where do I need to go for this or for that? But it's all in that one place. Imagine then that increased productivity, that improved effectiveness, and even reduced stress, right? Because you're going to be able to find what you need. To us and to me, that's the power of a workplace experience app. I think one of the learnings from the pandemic is that we need to be and we want to be more connected than ever before. This has given us the channels that enable and enhance those connections a boost to further innovate, so more emphasis on those. And so what are those best ways to stay connected when you're working with your team, in your office, across the enterprise, within your local community? And how do we as workplace designers foster that seamless experience? We believe that those apps are going to help make that difference. And as you can see on some of those images that you're seeing on the screen, all those different resources that are available. The merging of the physical and digital is key to an optimized workforce experience, making that transition between the two seamless while providing choice for the workforce and how they connect. This is particularly important as demands on us increase, right? We're all kind of working harder than ever before. Organizations have their eye on productivity, growth, and advancement of their goods and services. And much of that boils down to, for us, making employees' lives easier. That's why, for us, our app is called Harbor at Work, enables us to help our clients make those connections, and we also use it for ourselves. So it's a great opportunity to make those connections. You know, the access to health and wellness, all the resources that you need during a typical day. So when we think about workplace experience apps and what they do for us, it really boils down to choice and access. And if you think about the word choice, I think it's very familiar to all of us. It's been part of our vocabulary as designers and strategists for a very long time. As consumers, we expect choice, and it translates into our professional lives. Studies have shown that employees who have more control over their work life are more engaged and are more highly satisfied. So it's important. It's important for individuals, and it's important for the business as they work together. So the benefit of that experience app is that it's providing more choices, access to those, while linking the digital and physical together. So when we think about what's included in a workplace experience app, it's everything from being able to reserve a conference room, to connecting with a colleague, to finding out what's nearby for lunch. There's lots of resources that can be built on in terms of what you incorporate into that experience. It can really be from soup to nuts. And then in terms of what's next, there's a lot of opportunity to build on these applications. What we're seeing is, with the rise and expansion of artificial intelligence, those apps will be able to help you, or even say, gosh, Tish, that workstation you always reserve when you come in, it's open today, even before I ask for it. My favorite coffee has just been brewed. My favorite entree in the cafeteria is on the menu today. So what are the things that it can do in advance, again, to speed up that ability to keep our lives or make our lives easier? And that will also be combined with, the rise of smart building. Smart building has been around for a while, not super widespread, but as it becomes more widespread, those two will be further linked.
It's a lot to really think about, right? There's some powerful messages that we can put forward within those applications. And I think about this idea of, as a workplace app, being an effective tool as you're dialoguing on it for a workforce. Are there maybe types of environments that would be pivotal in the future of work? I mean, with an app, if we're thinking about a truly distributed workforce?
Yeah, I think, an app is really, or the workplace experience app is really an extension of the physical workplace. So whether the workforce is working full-time in the office, or, the hybrid model is what people are talking about now, or being remote most of the time, it's enabling for all those types of models. And it brings people together within those clusters, if you will, and across those clusters, so that there can be that further connection between colleagues, clients, and the community.
There's another aspect of mentioning IoT and those connections and connections to the ready work and return to work. We're seeing a lot of furniture companies in a neocon call that are making more IoT capabilities built into systems that could relate directly to it, because Tish, you'd used the word extension. I think of any digital tool with my work as an extension of our capabilities, as well as the desire of the client, the culture, the company, and how those things meet. And one aspect that we're going to be dealing with for quite a while is returning safely to work, both in reality and in perception. So these apps can also have modules built in for ready work checklists, for self-reporting, kiosk reporting, to make sure someone has gone through a few steps where they're on-prem. When they do get to the location, the app knows it and can tell others that they're available and they're there now, or whether ready work doesn't work if you're not there. So if there's a transit problem, you can be informed automatically. That's your AI discussion, Tish, right? The app knows there's a problem, and it'll tell you, by the way, you're not going to make that meeting. Do you want to move it to another time? And do you want to cancel the food order from the food service? So that combination of having more specific short-term to return from a global pandemic aspect, which is critical, but then ongoing. How does it help you just connect every day with what you're trying to do?
And I think that's a really interesting point, Guy, because certainly with what Tish was just talking about, with the idea of smart buildings and linking those together, and then as you're talking about, in fact, there's a question that just came up in the dialog box about the idea of all of these external systems and feeding that information. Neil, I'm thinking about from a design perspective, and again from your world, thinking about how an app can connect to these types of systems, and is there even a way to promote wellness, and how are we seeing these changes affect our our relationship really with some of our partners?
Yeah, that's a great one, Ray. I think a couple of years ago, we were diving heavy in with a lot of our clients on building smart building systems and working through these ecosystems and how to tie that together, and using similar systems like a harbor app where we're attaching different things from, say, Comfy for temperature controls, or your lighting controls, or reservation systems through some of the different, whether it's a Lutron system that we're playing with. A lot of these companies have invested into those technologies and using those systems to be able to allow the right choice for your users as we're building new space. So not only does it provide really great data for the users entering back into the office on their way to work and learning from that, but it's also allowing you, once you get to the space, to use the systems that people are building into the building to also provide those comforts and that choice. Using, there's some great systems there just on heat mapping to say, this area of the building's really busy. I don't feel comfortable with that right now. I'm going to go sit over in this cafe area because it's just a little bit softer and quieter for what type of work I need that day. Or make those strong decisions of saying, you know what, the trains aren't working today. I'm going to go maybe to a hotel and work from there instead, or a coffee shop, or choose to stay home that day and then virtually log in using some of the XR systems or some of these virtual collaboration systems that we'll talk about a little bit later.
Yeah, I think that's what's one of the really exciting aspects of a workplace experience app is having that data at your fingertips, because data can really help support decision making. And when you have informed decision making, again, that kind of ties back to the control and just being more efficient with our time and our efforts. We all have, generally, many of us have more on our plate than we can do in any given day, right? So even saving that 5-10 minutes can make a difference.
I think
A
that's
couple of aspects of that, everyone, just to jump in on that. Two things that make that work. Yeah, I'm going to be that person talking about the practical stuff. But we are talking to clients about this pretty often now, about the workplace app and integration. And a couple of items. One is breaking down some silos that currently exist. It's the same thing with XR, frankly, but having real estate groups working with, IT and facilities and HR. I see those are really the four groups that make a workplace app really sing and function, not only from a cultural and an integration standpoint, also. You'd mentioned heat mapping, Neil. So that infers you're tracking occupancy at least. Okay, that may be fine. There may be some desires to track things more personally, like I want to know where I am or where someone else is. Now you're talking about non-anonymous tracking, and that is a discussion to have at a very high level in any company or a firm. It's one I think you can solve, but you need to start the conversation. It's not a given that everyone's going to be comfortable having anyone else know where they are in space because you know where your mobile is. So just some consideration.
Absolutely great thoughts. And guys, certainly things, as you said, that I think are powerful about getting those conversations started now, because we continue to see how these dialogues move forward. And in fact, Neil, I think it's your turn to talk now, because I want to hear a little bit about this from your perspective, because certainly we are seeing and hearing a lot of conversations about these types of emerging technologies, whether what we've presented already or new things which are still yet to come. And many of these have been designed to foster productivity, connectivity when people are working in the same office, but maybe they're not actually all present in that space. So share a little bit about what you're hearing out in the marketplace around what these new technologies represent and whether they can meet those types of objectives.
Yeah, thanks, Ray. I think one of the things before we dive into the different technologies, it's what is happening with a lot of our companies that are out there, and how are they thinking about certain things? And when we go back and we start talking with clients about their new real estate kind of return to work environments, it's do become more distributed across the country. A lot of small offices that everybody can remote into that are really more advanced with the technology. Are they going to stay status quo? And there's areas of the country that they're like, we're going to wait this out and we're going to keep the offices the way they are. Are we going to look at a more distributed model with hubs and in larger kind of facilities for those interactions to bring people together in? And that helps us look at a little bit of that diversified workforce or distributed workforce. And so companies are all doing different things. So when we look at those different models for how they're trying to retool, Ray, we were talking with a bank a while back about, we have all these bank locations all across. Could we actually use those banks as hubs for our employees to go remote into our systems and have more powered systems? Mm-hmm. Brilliant. It's nice to see clients start thinking bigger. This year gave us the ability to be like, what if we can do this? What if we change our model? How do we challenge the status quo? And I think those are the interesting models that we're starting to see from different clients. But it's also, we talk a lot about that distributed workforce, right? So we've been talking about it for years, and some consultants have been in that world for a very long time. So the distributed workforce is if I'm working at home, if I'm working at a hotel because I'm traveling, if I'm working in the actual office or in a field office or my client's office. And so when we look at where these people are at in those interactions and how the company's investing, then we can start looking at the different softwares and frameworks to even look at your built versus your digital platform and almost weaving those elements together to make sure that we're creating the ideal experience for clients going forward. I know at IA, it was a bit of a shock. We had to move to a full cloud-based platform very fast. And luckily we were well into that as a company. So we knew where we were going. But now we're testing different products like Miro, or Hayworth had the Bluescape that came out a few years ago, right? And everybody thought, oh, this isn't achievable and it's crazy. But that's the reality now. We're looking at these amazing new emerging technologies for interactions. Even as Guy teed up, the world of Microsoft Mesh. And if you get a chance, go look at the way that system works. It's good to dream big about how Teams or video calls and XR environments all can blend in this new platform. And I think knowing where people are at, how the companies are distributed, and then how the software and technology can support that allows us to build better, more purposeful, meaningful spaces. Yeah, I think this what's next slide, it's kind of fun to look at. And, we were talking, Guy teed up on it, up in the top left, we had the Google glasses years ago. Those came out and people could not get their head around it. It was a big deal. I don't think, where we are today, is a very different thing. They were ahead of the curve. You know, do we believe that we're moving into a world where that technology is able to make our lives simpler and easier, whether it's through the apps, through the different Oculuses or the goggles system, to really define something better for the experience of all of our employees?
Wow. So yet again, there's a lot of interesting thoughts here, Neil, in how all of these elements can particularly come together and building off of the first two pieces of the discussion. So from your experience, when we think about your work in design, how has that experience changed based off integrating either the technologies we previously discussed or these new technologies that are really at the edge of what's happening today? You know, what are you seeing clients are looking for within these new types of platforms?
I think one of the big things that we hear a lot is how do we shed archaic processes? How do we get rid of the stuff that just bogs down our day and use our technology to be smarter and faster and bring people together to have creative ideas? So, you know, a lot of the time companies had so many processes in place of like, how do we get from point A to point B? And that has, we've basically been able to break that apart and rethink that system. And so when we do that, definitely in the creative realm, we're using softwares like Miro, and you know, there's tons of them out there, is like to be able to extract ideas and see it visually of like how all our different designers are talking to each other. Like it gets me excited to finally see inside their head versus it being stored in everybody's PC locally. Like now I can see that vision. I can see how people think. We can start to work together and come up with better solutions. So I think, you know, that's been fun, not only for us internally, but it's been fun for our clients to say, you're right. Like I don't need to do another PowerPoint deck. There's some really great things that hopefully will come out of this. Tish, I think you're on mute. I see you moving.
Well, let me jump in while we're solving that mic thing. You know, again, Neil has been really pioneering a lot of these interactive technologies, and pushing my group hard to work with them. But and the response has been great. You know, the one of the opportunities, of course, the few high spots during a shutdown and remote working is we've learned how to use these things and value them in context of not just because we have to. Now it's moving towards what we want to. You know what I mean, Neil? Like people are seeing the benefit regardless, because we work across offices all the time. You know, we aren't traveling everywhere. We need to work together, as do our clients. And so as we adapt to these technologies, we drive the development of them. We drive the evolution. You know, we really like being development partners of software platforms, and with the clients we have behind us, people tend to listen. But also, these things start coming together. So example, you're in a XR environment, you're meeting with other people, you have a virtual screen up, you want that Miro board up on that screen so that you are saving and collaborating. It's a little meta, I know, but you know, you're working on a virtual whiteboard in a virtual environment, but that's what's desired. It's been very clear. That's what the clients want. They don't want to have one-off things that just sit there in an extended reality space. They want it shareable and cataloged ongoing.
Yeah, I think, you know, I know
please
Tish,
go ahead.
We lost Tish there, but I think you're right. You know, a lot of the stuff, even with our retail clients, is how do we build immersive spaces for them to interact with each other in a better way? And I think, you know, our clients push us as hard as we push for these new technologies just to be smarter.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, you know, and I guess what I'm thinking about here too, before we launch into questions from the audience, is, you know, we're talking a lot again about these technologies, and then Neil, bringing it back to your previous point about distributed workforce. So how are these technologies and platforms starting to influence work environments themselves? I mean, are we seeing an influence through the home environment or the tertiary environment? Actually, or Guy, I mean, what are you seeing?
Let me talk about that, because this stuff is. There we go. Sorry, it's chopping and changing, you know, weekly, and I'm not. That's not hyperbole. It is really fast. I think a few months ago, Neil and I were talking, as a matter of fact, about, we have an advanced group digital studio that you help run, Ray. And
Right.
what new, cool, amazing hardware are we going to be installing in offices to project people's holograms, right? Remember that? It was very recent. Like, that's what it's going to take to have that hybrid workforce. Some people remote, some people are in the office. And now we're seeing that changing, where you're not going to need nearly as much hardware. You just need really great bandwidth. 5G is going to have a lot to do with this, more advanced mobile and internet networking protocols. But as we see with things like Microsoft Mesh's platform, part of what they're doing, and I'm not trying to sell someone on the Microsoft ecosystem, but what they're presenting is the ability to have your representation, your avatar, your holographic presence, if you will, be part of the system, not requiring a projector. By simply putting on a very comfortable headset or a pair of glasses, you would see the other person's avatar without additional AV. It's a big cost change, let's face it,
Right.
As well as ease of use. If it's easy, people will use it a lot more.
It's definitely, I mean, I agree with you, Guy, completely. I think, you hear this stuff and you look at it and you're like, oh, I need to redesign a ton of our spaces to be adaptable to this new environment. I think it's all about the flexibility and the ability for each user to choose how they want to use it. And, it is within some of these XR environments as simple as putting on a set of goggles versus building these really complicated spaces that people are in. But I think as we look at the distributed model, Ray, like you were describing, what we have to understand is when people are more distributed and you rent this beautiful Airbnb up in the hills in Montana to work remotely, which, I think people are going to want those choices in their life coming out of this. We need to look at things like their capabilities and their bandwidth within those facilities to be able to create the right interaction for the clients that we're working with, as well as to stay productive with our business. So looking at the way that if we are deploying a work from home model or a more distributed model, that you're 3 days remote and 2 days in the office, or however the companies are looking at it, then it would be making sure that your home is equipped with the same kind of levels that we would want, or that we've regionalized certain approaches where you can go into a built environment that really has the bandwidth to support these, or these ideation centers that are built throughout the country. So I think these aren't easy decisions. These are big real estate decisions that people need to start looking at.
Right.
But I think understanding how they're going to return to work, what kind of softwares they're going to look at, and then how do we make it achievable for our users in those environments is going to be very important.
I think those are great points. There's some really interesting questions that are popping up in the chat box. But before we go there, Tish, since I know you had a little snafu there, did you have any comments that you'd like to add to the discussion around emerging new technologies before we launch into any of those?
No, I think I'm good. Keep going.
Okay. Okay. So as I noted, there are some really interesting questions that are coming through that I think actually directly questions some of the ideas that we're pushing forward and also offer to support. So let's just take a couple of them and
So I just go back to our webcam, Ray?
I'm sorry? Yeah, that's actually a great idea. Why not? We'll go ahead and broaden since we've got that going on.
There we go.
All right. So one of the quick comments that was actually made, more so than a question, is looking at how, and the way I'm going to interpret this is, does gaming in any way also, whether gaming systems or gaming technology, also assist us in thinking about mixed reality environments? What work might be doing that's crossing that boundary from what people used to think of as purely fun and special environments into actually how work could be accomplished?
I want to hear a lot from Tish and Neil on this, because a lot of this has to do with psychology of experience. But from a technology standpoint, the focus of XR and VR for many years has been games first, commercial business way down the ladder. That has radically changed the last few months. We see from Facebook's recent event where the CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, was standing up and saying clearly, this is our direction, this is where we're going, this is how we're doing the business of this. As well as, so the word gaming has an effect on it, but it's still good design in understanding real estate, and it's good strategic approach. But the word gamification has been coming up a lot. How do we make that experience more fun and more connected So people are getting something out of it. People like to get stuff for something. Like if I'm spending time doing this, what am I getting out of it beyond, oh, massive productivity? So gamification is something we're starting to see. And so gaming, the technology that Fed is great. We now own it ourselves. I think the commercial and workplace design is now owning XR and VR, but gamification is a new horizon we're looking at.
Yeah, one of the things that I see, and linked to what you're talking about, Guy, is when people are designing games, they're thinking about how do we keep people engaged? How do we keep people to keep doing the games or participating in that game, right? It's how to keep them focused and paying attention. And that's what we want to do in the workplace, right? We want to keep people focused. We want to maintain their attention. We want to make it so it's easy for them. I know I've said that probably 5 times on this call, but everything's about making it easy, right? How do I make it simple? How do we make it intuitive? And I think inherently games do that, right? They want to make it intuitive for people and how it works. And
they reward you. Remember, we had a client recently, they used the term gamification in a custom app environment. They said, how are you going to achieve gamification in our app? Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, and we all want to be rewarded, right? That's part of our work and part of our life. So I think that the benefits of the merging of those two, just like we learn from other industries, hospitality and all those, and that gamification, it's the same thing. How can we learn from that and improve that workplace experience?
Okay.
So there's a couple of questions which actually address something I think is rather interesting, and I'm actually going to combine 2 of them as we look at what we may want to answer. So again, one of our listeners has dialogued on the idea of our usage of the word choice and equity, and another has commented on how XR might have challenges in certain people's environments. And I think what it comes down to is the idea of equity. And I'll use that term yet again because the feeling that the dialogue here is, does this type of thing end up challenging people who may live in environments where bandwidth is a real problem, or perhaps can't afford the high level of bandwidth that might be required in order to run some of these elements at home? I mean, how are our clients potentially trying to address that and create, I mean, we're talking about experience equity, but have we heard anything how our clients are actually trying to address equity amongst their teams so that everyone can actually benefit from these types of things, regardless of where they may live?
I think that's a big one. I'll jump in here quick.
Yeah.
There was a lot of dialogue around digital equity, and Tish brought it up as before the pandemic, we would go into a meeting room, jump in the meeting room, and the couple people that were on the call would be forgotten about. So creating digital equity for all people within those environments is a very simple system of, as simple as saying just have a Zoom call where we can see everybody's faces, but we're all kind of probably a little zoomed out and in that world. But how do we then take it to the next level? I think when we were meeting with clients, they were like, if I have somebody that's hearing impaired or they have visual issues that can't get into the office, right. If they have, there's certain abilities, how do we build a space where they can come into the environment and their voices are heard just as strong as somebody else's? So that's an important factor. And that's what some of these technologies are going to be able to do is, I might not be able to get down to the office fast enough, or I may have some of these ailments. These XR environments of simply going into a quiet room that maybe is more light sensitive for me is going to help that. And some of that bandwidth, it's not as complicated. I know we talk a lot about it. It depends on how big the system is that you're going to be running and that idea of where a company wants to go with that choice on the softwares that they're providing within their platform.
The only thing getting cheaper in the world really is computing power. That's happening at a rapid rate, and bandwidth. That's what's happening. However, I feel very strongly about this. Companies have to invest in this. And we've been learning it ourselves as a firm when we went home. How do we make it equitable for everyone to join in with their particular internet situation? Do we invest in that?
Right.
We had like a stipend for equipment. How do we help people work better from home without breaking the bank? Right. And one client we talked to recently about XR put it very clearly. We're spending $25,000 per head for an Embarcadero location in San Francisco per person. If we have them at home and we spend $8,000 on XR and VR equipment and bandwidth, that's still, that's an okay investment if we're able to reduce the lease footprint. You know what I mean? They're not necessarily saving money, they're spending it differently and maybe more effectively. So you'd ask about cost, equity of technology. There needs to be an investment, but I think it can be a very smart investment.
And it goes back to Lynn a little bit where Tish was going into that simplification, or what I would assume is humanizing the technology to make it easy for everybody to use. Because a lot of people have that scare of, oh, it's a headset, and this just doesn't feel comfortable. And I remember when we put all of our managing directors into the headset for our leadership meetings over the last year, the first meeting was a little rocky, right? But they had to get adjusted to it. But the more they were adjusted to working in these XR environments, the more meaningful the dialogue became. But that interaction started to come together. And so like when you see that, and even a year passed, right, Guy, like the new spaces are so much cleaner, they're nicer, they're more comfortable, there's an ease to the users. So in 1 year, the sheer volume of improvements to XR spaces is quite exciting.
It takes a lot of evolution and work on it. Our team cracks those eggs every week, and we do direct development with the teams. But one story about ease of use, everyone, is we had a subject matter expert workshop. One of our global clients, we were working with two global consultants, Arap and TCOM, the name drop there. But we were concerned, like, how long can they stay in a headset? 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes? You have maybe an hour and a half of time on the battery. Well, they stayed in for 2 hours until the battery died. And there was everyone, it was brand new. They'd never had a headset before. And we suddenly people were disappearing. I thought, oh, they're running away. Then they'd come back on for a second. Our battery died. We love it. Then we moved over to a web meeting. That told us something. And that was like well after that first round with the leadership, Neil, right? We'd done a lot of development on environments, on study and understanding how it works.
Right.
I know that's a small group. That's not really a big focus group, but I'm optimistic. But
I think it's great. And actually, the reason I was leaping in there is because it actually ties in with a question that was just asked too, because I think you can build upon this. Multi-generational workforces. So how are we seeing, well, I guess the question is really around how do we overcome objections that might arise from this idea of a multi-generational workforce, and are there challenges with buy-in from these types of technologies? Neil, I think you touched on a little bit in your comment. Guy, you're obviously building on it now, because let's face it, our leadership group spans a very broad age range. So I think it'd be really interesting if maybe the two of you are, and Tish, certainly from your strategic perspective, want to weigh in on that. I mean, what do we see with multi-generational workforces? Is it really any different when we think about these technology innovations?
Well, I think there's, we've been doing these, more of our visioning sessions and ideation sessions in these kind of virtual collaboration tools. And, I think everybody's scared going into the meeting, but once they get in and start messing around with some of the software, they have more fun with it. They're more engaged. They're not multitasking on other events. And, it's been interesting to me because it's with some major companies, their executive teams are doing these visioning sessions. And they're like, that was the most exciting session I've ever done, because they were able to participate instead of just listening to you give a spiel on something. They were actually engaged in participating with each other, and not only just in the main forum, but with each other on sidebars, which I think that's an important factor of these XR environments, is that they can come in and not only are they part of the big event, but they can then have a heart-to-heart with somebody that they haven't maybe talked to in over a year, because we've all been working remotely. And so that's been really nice to see those interactions, even from all gamuts of age. So it's not just saying that it's one side. It's if the technology is simple enough, people will use it.
Yeah, and I think I kind of go back on this multi-generational idea or concern, because I really think as human beings, we all want to learn. There is, in many organizations, continuous learning is just part of the culture. And I think we're, this past year in particular, because of so much change has happened, we've had to learn to adapt, and in a way that's helped us. It helped, and I know for me, you know, I'm one of in the older baby boomer generation. For me, sometimes it's not as easy, maybe, but I would say there's people that are in my generation that are just as tech savvy as someone that's, you know, just out of school. So I think that it's just recognizing and being patient with each other. And I think just, you know, just like now, hey, we're not even on anything fancy, and I have all my bars of power and I got the blue circle and couldn't connect. So, you know, you never know, but we're just patient with each other, right? We just make it happen. And that ties into the empathy that we've all talked about, especially this year's, you know, hey, stuff happens, let's keep moving on.
Well, I know we only have 5 minutes left, and there's actually quite a few questions left in the chat. But one that immediately comes to my mind as well, and I think certainly with media attention recently over some of these rather large breaches, what about cybersecurity considerations? Are there anything that our clients or our suppliers are really doing to figure out how we can continue to make these types of environments secure?
Well, there's a minimum level we discuss with any platform before we talk to them, even before we even get into we work with our IT team, and fortunately, a lot of cloud platforms are well understood now. So there's the design of the technology, and then it's how you host it. How you host it is really the security opening. So it's got to be very tight, and we review. I mean, our clients demand security certificates in every kind of checklist you can think of. We're doing something out of London right now that is very thorough about this kind of thing. So most of it comes down to humans. I don't know how to break it to everybody. Most of it is like, are you careful with how you're managing your users and who you're giving passwords to, and that kind of thing. So you can have the best system in the world. It takes good management, and we work with our clients on that. Like, we help them and walk them through if they're going to manage it or unless they want us to. But usually it comes down to human management of other humans in space, to be honest.
And maybe there's one that I think is a really good question, and it's also one that might be very good for us to end this conversation on. So if you were to recommend transitioning to or adapting this type of environment for a typical office client, where do you start?
Well, we start with, if you're talking about this environment, XR,
let's talk about that.
We start with, it could be a quick complimentary demo with a couple of headsets with a small group, or we have a very organized pilot process we think is critical. You can't just go from zero to understanding what your environment is going to be. So we have a 12 to 14 week process. It's very rigorous. We developed it internally first with our own pilot groups. And it's a process where you discover what platform, what design, what do you do. Also understanding different stakeholder groups within an organization may need different environments. And that's part of what this process is. So it's about finding out what someone needs in the, dare I say it, bespoke process. You need to really take what's there and fine tune it for everybody. Every organization has different needs.
Absolutely.
I think it's probably for this group on the phone, in general, it's design thinking, right? We love to solve the problems. We love to dive into it. But, you know, you have to have those meaningful dialogues with your clients around what are they looking for, where their challenges lie, really do a deep dive into what do they want to achieve? Where is their real estate going? What are they looking at? And what are their struggles or pain points in their collaborative environments? And based off of that, you can be able to assess and develop these different tools that allow them the right choice for the organization. And I agree with Guy, it is bespoke. No two companies are looking at these environments the same. And that's the power of it. It empowers designers to use their minds, think differently, think bigger, and not just think about designing these beautiful built environments. We've got the capability now to design beautiful built environments, virtual environments, and as we said, weaving these amazing things together, working with a lot of our partners to embrace the different technologies, learn and evolve from that, and take it to the next level.
Okay, great.
I think this has been a really great discussion. I really appreciate everybody's enthusiasm and, of course, all the wonderful preparation that went into making what is a very complex topic very simple and understandable. So on behalf of IA, I certainly would like to thank Neocon and Lisa and her team for putting this panel together. And we are delighted to answer questions and continue the conversation at a later date. But with that, Lisa, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, no, thank you guys for a wonderful discussion, and thank you everyone for attending virtually. A recording of this session will be on the NeoCon website in a couple of days, so please check that out. And we hope that you'll stay tuned for information about our April programming series, which will be all about designing for well-being. So thank you again, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.